Welcome back, audience. Hope you're doing good. So, in this video, I want to talk about similar stuff I talked in the last video about this concept of it being illusion and not being real. Is like, what's the point of talking about it, right? And if people having that realization of like, oh my god, this is not real, get depressed, then that's not really a final look. I mean, I'm not saying that depression is something that is not natural for the time being. Sometimes it is natural, but you got to use every drop of that depression um, for I don't know what it for, but you use it like you can use it. Rather than being depressed, you can sort of be depressed, or you can face that depression and be focused on it, and you can use it. And it's a type of letting go of the pressure, because depression is a pressure. It's basically your beliefs are your beliefs is basically earth, and they're pressuring you because it has a lot of pressure, and you gotta rid of them. And so that's why when somebody says, look, after awakening I'm depressed, that, what do you mean by awakening? Is that what you mean by awakening? Because it sounds like you still have a belief, which you now you use it as like, I'm awakened belief. And then if you feel depressed, that's not alignment. That's not, if you really want to be accurate about the word awakening, it's not it. If you're depressed, you're not awakened. What the fuck are you talking about? And if you're depressed, that means it's a period that you got to face. You know, if you're depressed, you're actually going through the process. It's happening to you, but you're not there yet, because there's something more to discover. And so you have to go through it. And I can only tell you what I experienced. And the purpose of this realization that, for example, oh, everything's an illusion or real, like, what's the point? Because everything is a virtual reality. So what is the point of it? If it makes you depressed, then you didn't get the point. The point of it all is that when you are completely immersed in this virtual reality, like almost like, even if in a video game, if you ever tried virtual reality in a video game, you get immersed in it, and it almost becomes real to you. So the immersiveness, and so the immersiveness is not bad, right? Because if you forget yourself and you start taking life like super super serious, then you are immersed in it, right? You're in the midst of it, in the emotions and all that stuff, and you're like um, at the edge of it, right? And that's not necessarily bad. It's only bad when it's all there is to it. The immersion is good, losing yourself in this game. It's not bad, as long as you are also have awareness, either real time or in episode, that everything is not, quote unquote real. And what does that mean, not real? It just means that it's created by you. It means that you've created this game that you're playing. And so when the immersion goes away, then you start seeing the video game as a video game, and then you can, when you look at the entire game, like, oh, I can, program this to go this way, or do this, to that way. You become a little bit like a, eagle vision type of thing. You're zoomed out, and you can use that non-immersive state for creating the reality. because now you're not lost in it, you're not immersed in it, so you can just chill and say like, oh, I see, all right. So I spend some time creating it, meaning like start imagining or dreaming or lucid dreaming or whatever. Be the creative in a creative mode. And that is why you're depressed, because you're not being in the creative mode. You're depressed because your emotion is stopped. It's like, well, I don't want to do anything. Well, okay, if physically a lot of things kind of became pointless, but you can still do a lot with your imagination. You know, um, you gotta do at least minimal stuff for you to survive in this video game, so that doesn't go away. But the rest of the time, it's not. If you're creative, the rest of the time you're not gonna be depressed. This is why, like, if you stop the process of motion, any kind of motion, for example, even if you sit and quote unquote do nothing, you can still be very attentive of what the hell is going on, and there's still some motion. But when you go like that, then of course that's dullness and that's depression. So you can be relaxed and be very attentive at the same time. There's emotion and a no emotion happening. And so where is depression in that case? Depression is not awakening. Depression is actually the very definition of not being awakened, of not being in balance. It's the definition of you being off the side. Because like I said, there's two problems. Pressure, depression, pain, fear. There's always two problems. There's like this, the center is where you want to be. You go a little bit, not enough motion, you get depressed. If you go too much, you get into fear and pain zone. And so you got to stay in the middle. And you do that through your attention. So I don't like when people use words and apply them on a different meaning. I'm sorry, but that's fucked up. Yes, you can do that, but what's the fucking point of the word? To me, the word must mean the meaning. You know? So, it seems that there's a lot of depressed people out there that they call themselves awakened, you know? So, what the fuck is going on? It's another belief system. And like I said, the way you deal with the depression is you face it. Where is this depression thing? Where is it? and if you put full attention there and full awareness on where the fuck you think the depression is, you might feel a pressure here or whatever, your brain will stop, and then you'll realize that there's just a type of energy, and that energy will gonna be released, and then you're gonna go, oh shit, you know, I may as well do something. I've had many occasions like that where it was like depressive like episodes coming along, and I'm like, you know, you can go with it or you can face it. You can totally face it. I know. And so you can ask a question. It's like, okay, what's it between depression and not depression? Just to short circuit your brain. And you know, when something starts moving, emotion, something starts moving. When you're depressed, then there's no emotion. But when you let it face everything there, emotion starts happening. And whatever the emotion is, it starts moving you again. And you start being creative in any kind of way, you know? So as long as you're creative or in a process of creation, you cannot be depressed. Or as long as you're in the process of playing. This is why I say like immersion, when you're playing the game, sometimes it's good to get lost in it and take it serious, you know, and get angry and whatever. Like, it's good to get immersed in the game. It's not good to get lost in it, because then your suffering starts. But if you just take yourself like serious for a second and then later go, zoom out, it's like, oh my God, look, I took myself so serious. But it's not bad because you play the character, it's all good. It's when you're stuck with that character, that's when it's the problem. So you see, there's always this spectrum. And so people say like, oh, this right here, it's the answer. And then people say, no, you got to just go to God. God is the only answer. And then there's people who are just clinging to God, and the people who are clinging to earth, The gist is in between. You know? This is why you don't let go of this immersion. You've been immersed all your life, and perhaps you've been so immersed that you did not know that there is the creative mode of this reality, which are you're not immersed and you're like more zoomed out and not attached. I don't use that attached, but like you're not clinging to it. But when you discover that exists, that doesn't go away. So just because somebody says like, hey, did you know it's an illusion, it's a virtual reality? Yeah, but what else is there? Nothing else is there. This is it. This is like, well, you can say we're pretending we're pretending that it's real. Yep, we are. We're pretending that it's real, and it's awesome. Isn't that what you do in a video game? You pretend that it's real. But when you play a video game, there's this, you pretend that it's real. There is a part of you that is pretending, but there's another part of you that feels safe because it's like, hey, I can fuck up all I want. It's just video game. I can practice over and over and over again and get this right eventually, This is why, like, if you fuck up once, it's all right, This video is with the infinite lives. So it's everything is in between. Nothing is in extremes. But it's nice to have those extremes because in between is so much sweeter when you have extremes. This is why I said, in the previous video, that the more I go within myself, the more primal I become without. That's what's happening naturally. And I'm like, oh shit, I like it. I like to be extreme on my physical body and extreme in my soul. It's like how close I can be to God and an animal at the same time. And that's actually where you become most balanced. When you find that, I know what I'm saying is just my personal experience. This is what's happening to me, but I don't go by books or what they say that you have to transcend the animal. And I know that there's a part of it that you got to rid of. Or like the game is about correcting the brokenness in you. Like that. That we come here with parts. It's like a puzzle game with parts all over the board. We come here with that. And this is why there's nobody's fault. We start with this. It's like we challenge ourselves like that. So I'm just going to put all my puzzle pieces on the board. And I don't know now what the fuck is going on. And so little by little, I put the pieces back together. And that's what's going on in the heart. And as long as you go through that process within your heart, there's no animal in the heart. Because in the heart, you can either animal takes over your heart or God takes over your heart. And the idea is that, God takes over your heart and an animal stays only in your body. This way there's no arguments, about this, whether these normal, natural bodily needs is bad or not, and everybody's talking about transcending the body, like leaving this place, making the body shrink into nothingness. Like, what the hell are you talking about? I don't get it. Like, where else you gonna go? You are in a position where you can find the biggest and the most profound polarization that exists in the universe, in this consciousness, and to have this dichotomy of the animal and God, it, that's the center of all the centers. Because if you leave Earth, then you don't have the polarity, you know. So, one moment. All right, I'm back. What was I talking about? Right, the extremes. The extremes between animal and God. Which is, again, my view is always what can be experienced, because if you, I don't know, like sometimes things are too obvious to see, but I mean, you can see that you can never experience anything outside your immediate experience, right? So if you know if you see really what's going on through your direct experience, you will experience all these states of consciousness, all these emotions, what's behind the emotions. Soul is the emotional realm, mind is the pattern, the form pattern realm, the body is the sensation realm, because it's all sensations, in the body. So you have these three realms, and when you really, really deep down in your emotions, behind the emotions, you will touch something there that is like all emotions in one, if you will, right? And you can call that God. That's a God principle. And why it's so awesome is because when you're that deeply connected in your emotions, and you connect through your emotions, through life happens and the emotions happen, and that's why you connect. You don't need to go. The fact is that living your normal life is uh, the best thing for the best catalyst for your evolution and growth. Okay. And so yeah, you can sense these states, right? And you can feel like those states are taking what you would call like a negative energy, which was like just an emotion that was not balanced. But all these negative emotions that were not balanced, now that they're balanced, it's almost like you take those two extreme sides and they're being weaved together. And what you feel there is what people would call orgone. And the orgone and the emanation of orgone energy is that God principle. There's nothing fancy about it. And any person who faces their emotions on a day-to-day basis will be closer and closer to that principle. And what is it? That principle is so awesome? It's because it's self-organizing. It organizes everything automatically. You know. Um, and sometimes I call it like a degree between bliss and peace, um, just to put some labels on it. But that's all it is. And it's just energy. And if you create imaginary friend out of this, okay, you can create whatever you want out of this. But if you did not touch that energy and did not realize that, oh shit, this is what I'm feeling, this is me, this is not somebody else, this is me. And you can identify yourself with like more of that peace or more of that bliss. This is what I've noticed, that you can do that, and that would be like you're more like masculine, more feminine. And if you identify more with that bliss, then you need a lot of peace to sustain it, because if you don't have peace around you, or that soft energy, then that bliss cannot be sustained. It starts burning. So you got to have that, you know, magnetic field around it for that nuclear reactor to keep going. But you know, that's what you recognize within yourself. So I don't know about this thing, that what people are talking about, praying to some entity. I don't understand this, because I've never experienced this. If I'm honest with myself, you know, if I don't just copy them and try to do the same thing, if I don't copy anybody, then that's not what I'm experiencing. And you can imagine somebody, you know, like an entity, that, and you can attribute those energies to that entity if you like, you know. But I think that's what we do anyway, automatically. And one thing I also want to share about emotions and feelings, emotions being the electromagnetic wave in motion. That's the masculine motion. Emotions are actually made from the masculine energy. Fire. That creates emotions. Fire. And then there's feeling of it. Feminine. But the thing is that, again, you will be able to experience whatever you experience right here, right now. And so it's never going to be, you know, what I'm trying to say here is that there's never going to be that there's another person having an emotion. You either feel it or you don't. And if you don't feel it, then there is no emotion. But if you do feel it, then there is emotion. And emotions often happens when there's your energy and somebody else's energy, and the contrast between those two energies creates the energy and motion. But even in that motion, there is no, what I'm trying to say, that there's this idea of other is very tricky, because you're experiencing other where? Within yourself. You see how tricky this is? But if you can be aware that other is you because you're experiencing them the way you're experiencing them within yourself, and there's this otherness, and then there's you-ness, and they're both together happening. And actually, only when there's this otherness and you-ness in one, only then you can actually have any kind of real connection with another human being. When there's something that you share, especially if you share an emotion or feeling, and in that moment there is a resonance that like there's a recognition that like, hey, this is me and this is you, and this is just like we're both experiencing us kind of thing. Now that is love, because there's no separation. But then at the same time there's this paradox, is like, oh my god, this is us thingness going on, but there's a separation. And the paradox is that there's a separation and union in one. And it's amazing. It feels amazing to be separate and one at the same time. Because you can't have enough of it. You see? You can't have enough of it because it's separate. Because if it would be enough of it, then there would be no separation. There would be just union, and then that would be just nothing. Depression, perhaps. But if there's can't have enough of it, then that's real. And sometimes people in relationships says like, well, um, some people like they really want it, but when they get it, they don't want it. That's not love. That was a tantrum. But when you have it and you still want it and you can't have enough of it, now that may be something closer to love. That's just the way I see it. You have to want it, have it, and want it at the same time. You see how everything is in between? And how it's not possible to argue uh, for one side or the other? And it's always like there's a correctness and the corruption that's real. I mean, we start with the corruption, and we little by little we correct that corruption, within ourselves. And the corruption, in that sense, is not bad if you use it to correct it. And sometimes some people like don't want to correct it, so they say like, well, just this is me. Well, no, not really, because you came here with this, you know, to work on it. You came here to work on it. You didn't come here to just say like, oh, fuck it. This is me now. I'm fucked up. That's it. No, that's not what. No, it's not what's really going on. And no one will accept you as that, like that. Think about it for a second. If someone really cares about you, would they accept you? In a way that is not really you. It's that distortions that you have. And what is you're asking them to accept you as you are, quote unquote, and you don't even know what you are, and you have the corruption within your heart, and you say, accept me as I am. No, thank you. I'll accept you as you are, as you truly are in your heart. But I won't accept, because what's the fucking point accepting the ego? I don't even know what that means. You're supposed to use it to reconstruct it, because ego is a desire. It's supposed to be used for creating your soul desire. It's not supposed to be used to have a tantrum. And this is why there's two sides of it. And sometimes it's like, if you let people do whatever you want, so to speak, right? And of course everything's fine, because they're gonna learn the lesson, because this reality is a closed system. Everything is connected. There is no outside of it. And eventually it does go back into the balance. But do you really want to go such a big detour and go through all this suffering to finally come back to the same point where you could have stayed in the center the entire time and enjoyed your life? This is why there has to be this, like, fatherly energy to determine what is right and what is wrong, because absolutely there is something that is right and there is something that is wrong, and if you cannot remove that in a duality, in a time space, it's a feature of the game. There's parts that are wrong in order so you could have something to do to correct it. It creates the drive for the game. Think about it, like, of course it has to be. It's obvious. But it's not to say that, well, let's just accept the wrongness of it, because then you're missing the point of the game. And also you're missing the point of the game if you think that one day you're going to be arrive, so to speak, where everything's going to be kind of perfect and you don't have to do anything. It's boring. See, this is because as long as I can get to create, and as long as I can play, I can do this forever. Oh, you can't have enough of this. Just like love, you can't have enough of this. You know, it's like a drug that you are connected to rather than being addicted to. This is why I get why people like use drugs to, because they're looking for the connection, but they're cheating. You know, you can find exact same connection whatever your drugs bring you. You can find those states by facing your emotions. That, you know, life happens, something happens, and then there's a grief, and there's freaking face that shit all the way, and then something like a drug will start appearing, um, similar to what the drug would have induced before. You see, it's better to have something that you can have enough of. It's better to have that within you that you can have enough of. It's not good when you can have that when it's not part of you. You can't have enough of something that is not part of you. Now that's gonna lead you to into crazy adventures. Not even a good one. But who am I to judge? Do whatever you like. Do whatever you like. This reality is what I've learned to be a really good teacher, and it doesn't let anything slide. That's the thing about that. Anyway, that's the message. Be somewhere in between. And if you have any kind of questions about this reality, is like, oh, is it this? Is it one or is it two? Is it unity or is it singularity? Is like, is it separate or together? Uh, you know, uh, is it anxiety or depression? If you just go straight in the middle, it's a solution to all the problems. Everything's in between. Do I hate this person or do I love this person? What's in between hate and love? Compassion. The real love, actually. The real love is compassion. The other one we should call something else, but you see, we use the word love to denominate multiple states of consciousness. And that's the fault of language. But compassion is real love. Because there's passion and there's a, suppose, community. Communion and passion in one, compassion. And compassion is not, it's an intense feeling. It's what would happen between hate and love. Imagine. It's an intense feeling of passion. Anyway, enough of babble today. I'll see you next one. Peace. Take care.